All right, you can begin if you'd like.
All right, thank you, Jesus. Welcome, everybody, to the August 17th, 2022 meeting of the CB6 Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Athaid, and I'm the chair of Manhattan Community Board 6. This meeting is called to order at 6:35 p.m., and tonight we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. As a reminder, New York state law now requires all community board members to have their cameras on and have their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. So please make sure you get those ready. Tonight's minutes will be taken by the CB6 office. We will now take attendance by roll call, and Jesus will conduct the roll call. So please answer present when your name is called.
All right, everyone. Kyle Athaid.
Present.
Thank you. LV Barroso. LV Barroso. Okay, I don't hear anything. Matt Bondi.
Here.
Thank you. Claire Brennan.
Here.
Thank you. John Keller.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra McKee. Sandra McKee. Don't hear anything. Rich Min.
Here.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Reshma Patel.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Sandro Sharad. Sandro Sharad. Don't hear anything. Mark Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. With 10 out of 13 members present, we do have quorum.
All right, thank you, Jesus. The agenda for tonight's meeting appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. So members of the executive committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the July 20th meeting were distributed to executive committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. So committee members, again, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the July 20th meeting are adopted. In order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's be reminded of a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. If you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please first raise your hand through Zoom. A reminder that the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address or link, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will first identify you and then you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And as always, we are required by New York State law to have a transcript of the meeting, so please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And again, I just will remind everybody that committee members are required by the state open meetings law to have your Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed during tonight's entire meeting. So that means from call to order to the adjournment. And if you must step away from your computer for any reason, you are required to leave your camera on. So I will now begin by delivering my chair's report. I just have a couple of points that I want to bring up. First is on the open meetings law. Governor Hochul, if you haven't seen, just recently issued Executive Order 11.9, which extends the emergency order yet again for another 30 days, which means this will go through September 12th, 2022. So we will have the option to remain completely virtual until that time. You might notice that this is 2 days before our full board meeting, which is on September 14th. While we do anticipate that it will be extended yet again, I have already asked the board office to prepare several potential sites for us to have an in-person or hybrid meeting, whatever is allowed for our September full board meeting. So we'll be sure to update you on that as we hear about that. But rest assured, we are making preparations for any type of situation that may arise. I want to mention the city council redistricting, but before I get into any of those details, I do want to thank the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. Truly a wonderful job in tackling this issue. There was a quick turnaround from when the draft map was released and when we had our committee meeting. There were over 120 different people on this meeting. And so, as I said in my email, kudos to Reshma for running such a wonderful meeting. It's one of those meetings that could have easily devolved into a circus. But even so, Reshma was the ringmaster. So I appreciate, Reshma, all of the work that you did in that meeting. And then, of course, the full board for the emergency meeting. As I said, and again in the email, what a demonstration of the quality of board that we have and our commitment that we were able to have such a quick emergency meeting and have a quorum for that and be able to discuss this issue the way it deserved to be. So what does that mean? So now that we have a full board resolution, we are able to voice the concerns of the community. The next Manhattan-based public hearing will take place on Monday, August 22nd at 5:30 p.m. It'll be located at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, and that's in Harlem. The information is on the links as well as in the email I sent out. And you have the option to join virtually. You can watch live on YouTube. You can attend in person. And you can also pre-register whether you want to submit, if you want to speak at this meeting, you can do this virtually or through or in person. So I'll put that link in the chat so that you can sign up for that if you wish to do so. You're also allowed to submit testimony via email to publictestimony@redistricting.nyc.gov. So I'll add that email to the chat as well. And one of the things that I mean is common sense about this and fairly obvious is the more people who speak on this issue, the more people who show up, whether it's virtually or in person, the better. It just demonstrates the amount of community support and concern for such an issue. So numbers do matter in this. So whether you can attend in person or virtually, please do so. If you can even send an email, quick email, doesn't have to be a detailed email, saying that you support the resolution of CB6. Feel free to echo the details that we've put in that resolution, but that will go a long way in making sure that this is addressed. And just before I move on from this topic, I do want to give Letty a couple of seconds to just mention something about redistricting. So Letty, if you want to go ahead.
I think you've covered it very well. All I wanted to say to follow up what you were talking about is the fact that the Sutton Place Parks Conservancy has arranged for free buses going up to the hearing and back. The buses will leave from Sutton Place at 4:30 on Monday. We will leave the hearing at 7:30 and be back by 8 o'clock. So if anybody wants to go, and transportation is an issue, please join us. We have room on the bus. So,
Great. Thank you, Letty. And thank you to the rest of the community members for organizing so well. Really appreciate it.
So if anybody would just send me an email if they want to go, I'll get the information to them, and that's it. And we're ready to go. We'd love everybody to join us. And as you said, there is strength in numbers, and we're going to show them that we count.
Fantastic. And I, of
Thank
course,
you.
yeah, and I, of course, as the chair, will be delivering testimony. So will the chair of Community Board 8. So we will really be well represented and in solidarity with one another. And Letty, if you feel comfortable, could you add your email to the chat?
I'll be happy to. I'll add my email and my phone number gladly.
Fantastic.
Okay, and I will do that now. Bye bye. I'll stay for the meeting, but thank you very much, Kyle. Bye.
Of course. Thank you, Letty. So moving on to another subject. So this is something that we have discussed before. This is the New York Public Library. So despite our best efforts, the New York Public Library has officially moved ahead with closing the Grand Central Library branch. They notified us at the end of last week. Operations will cease on December 1st, 2022. What this does mean is that there is what I'll call a library desert in our district for our Midtown East communities. So I've spoken with Kevin and Jeannie, as well as Anne, who was a patron of the Grand Central Library, about potentially passing a resolution requesting a branch in Midtown East, as well as for any funding that the New York Public Library would need to support such a branch. I know that was an issue before, but we'll discuss this in further detail about the best way to strategize this on this. And Kevin, we can jump into it during your committee report. But to at least get on record to advocate for the gap that this is going to lead, we can figure out the best way to make sure that those patrons are still represented. The two current libraries that the Grand Central Library branch was created to address was the renovations of the 53rd Street Library, as well as the Stavros Niarchos Library. Both of those are not technically in our district. They're just outside, and they're not necessarily convenient to get to from Midtown East because they are on about 5th Avenue. So we will be following that very closely. And then last but not least, all of you should have received your past year's agendas for your review and feedback. We went through at our July executive committee meeting. We went through how we should be examining this to influence our future meetings. So with that, you should have also received the Excel work plan so that you can sketch out what your individual meetings will look like for the upcoming year. We want to make sure that there's a thread running through our meetings, that we have a theme for each committee, and that we're making sure that we are as cohesive as possible. So please fill these out in partnership with your vice chairs. You don't need to do this alone. And reply back to me in that email with potential meeting times so that we can discuss your work plans and your past agendas with executive leadership, so our first and second vice chairs, as well as the Port Office, because we want to make sure that all of our meetings are productive and that each of you are supported in the work that you undertake this year. We have a lot of big ideas, so we want to make sure that we are working in perfect harmony with that. So please make sure that you take a look at that if you have not already done so, and respond to the thread. And with that, I'll conclude my chair's report and turn it over to Jesus Perez, District Manager.
Thank you, everyone. In the interest of time, actually, I'll waive my report this month. Anything I have can wait until full board in September. So for those who are eager to get out to anniversaries and college-bound children and such, consider this a gift for you.
All right, thank you so much, Jesus. So let's move on to our committee agendas, and we'll start with Environment and Parks. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, the Environment and Parks Committee did not have an August meeting, although I think I speak for the members that we look forward to a productive September 6th meeting. On the upcoming agenda, number one, discussion of community center vision. Our Vice Chair Jeannie and I have started addressing this, including capital needs. The center would factor in senior and library needs. Number two is a report from the Parks Department. Trees will be among the topics. We want a lot more trees in the district, but we need to have a program that will keep them maintained and safe. After I started discussions on this topic last week, some sad related news. On Saturday at Salgado Playground, City Park in Bed-Stuy, a 35-year-old man was sitting on a bench when a limb from a London plane tree fell on him. About 12 hours later, he died from the injuries. Yesterday, although on private property in the Bronx, a 59-year-old woman swimming laps at a pool at her apartment complex was killed by a falling tree. So again, starting about a week ago, I have been in contact with the Parks Department, urban arborists, Stuyvesant Square Neighborhood Association, Murray Hill Neighborhood Association, and other groups about pruning and growing of trees in the district. This is after meetings on the same topic earlier this year with the Borough President's Office and others. As many of us know, the borough presidents have started a Million More Trees initiative, and the Murray Hill Group is reviving an adopted tree planting campaign that they started back in the 1970s. I'll add that it was really nice to see Kyle recently in St. Martin Park and introduce him to the state president of the Daughters of the British Empire. Now, this group, as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, is budgeting for 1 tree in each United States to be planted over the next couple of years. St. Martin Park has been chosen as the preferred location of the New York State tree. We may have a couple of speakers about this topic. Again, we've been in touch with the borough president's office, has been their policy director, who wants to make sure we're doing the tree initiative right. Number 3, I believe we are, yes, report on opportunities for new publicly accessible green space in the district. This does include United Nations Garden, the triangular parcel atop the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and also Kips Bay Tower, just to name 3. On the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and I know there has been discussions, I believe, in land use on this, but I did get a report last week from Representative Epstein's office that it is working on further support from Governor's Hochul office to make that green space publicly accessible. We'll continue discussion of the proposed fiscal year budget requests. We got a lot better head start than we did last year and feel good about that. As far as all the new business, I had an interesting discussion the other day with somebody from the United Nations who works with diseases. Not to alarm anybody, but there are 2 diseases that may be coming to our shores. One is malaria, and we may try to give some time to that representative so that everybody's aware that we need to be focused on our future, not just the current diseases. Guess Kyle, request for partnerships. We have started drafting an illustrative map to show the attainable space of the district that is not open to the general public, but that we believe should be. So we will likely request a graphic artist to work with us on this. This is in line with the committee vision, which is to continue to help more district space become publicly accessible. That's pretty much it for me, although no, as you mentioned, Kyle, you wanted to talk about NYPL. We did discuss this at the March and April meetings with time given at each meeting for potential action by the committee. We are very fortunate that our Vice Chair Jeannie spoke directly with the President and CEO of New York Public Library, Tony Marks. And look, I see both sides here. We did not have anybody that stepped forward that wanted to propose a resolution. I think that is clearly because Tony was very clear about him wanting to keep it open, but can't. I'm just going to read, Jeannie's not here, so just some of the things that she mentioned at the April meeting. So this is her speaking. With 2 library branches within 10 blocks from each other, that's much better than some other districts. He said in order, she's talking about Tony, he said in order to keep the 3rd library open, he would literally have to pull resources from other poorer neighborhoods, as he put it, to do that. He says, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. 8 full-time staff in Grand Central will continue to do amazing work throughout the New York Public Library system. The last thing he wants to do is close the library branch. He just doesn't have the resources to keep the 3rd library branch open. And again, I said at that meeting, if anybody wishes to present a resolution or anything else, this would be the time to do so. There were no takers. So I think this, and I have been in touch with Anne. I know that she lives there. She's been a great advocate for the library branch opening and for the library system in general. Kyle, as you have, certainly for this library system. I think even Anne knows that is a fait accompli. That ship has sailed. And my question is, if we're going to go down the road, which I'm not convinced we are, to do a resolution, knowing that that decision is final and without having really an elected official to mount a advocacy campaign, I don't know whether we should take that extra step. I'm thinking no at this point. So, but I'm certainly open ears to any discussion.
Yeah, the way I was thinking about it was, instead of specific to the Grand Central Library itself, was to advocate for an additional library in the northern end of our district, since we don't really have one after Kips Bay. between Kipsey and the northern end. Everything else is just outside the district. So I think, for at least to have our board be on the record for having advocated for a branch to service what, we can call a library desert or some other term. And then obviously request the funding, because New York Public Library would love to have as many library branches open as they could have, I think would go a long way in making sure that the community knows that we have that in mind. And obviously then our job after passing such a resolution, which we can introduce through the committee itself, we don't have to have someone volunteer to do it. We can introduce it, and I'll help draft any potential resolution that we want to do. And then, obviously our job as community board is to advocate for that. So if that's something we can do, I think it would be sort of, a good testament to the community board really being proactive on addressing something before it becomes too late. And public library always needs to be funded. So,
well, it's reality. And again, this is not a passing judgment on whether there should be libraries. I think we all, including, Mr. Parks, wants more libraries. I just know that not having any takers on this resolution, it's almost like we're, trying to put a bit of a round peg in a square hole. So, or vice versa, I think actually the expression. So, that's the thing, is we've gone down this road before, and now we're reviving it. I know there are other people. Mark is on the Environment and Parks Committee. I see him here. I know Letty is not here from the executive committee. She's on there. If it's okay, I would love to see, any other, comments about this, because I really feel that we went down that road.
yeah, I think the angle is slightly different in that we're not asking specifically for a branch to remain open, but to highlight that there is a library desert.
But let me ask this: does it have to be a resolution? Can the potential be a letter? Can it be some other advocacy expression besides?
I mean, I guess technically, right? But it's the board only ever speaks through resolutions. So to have something that was passed through committee and then passes a full board, I think is much stronger than simply treating it as a service request. I think it also means a lot to the public, but I mean, we can figure out whatever, a letter or a resolution. It's not.
Well, I just think that the committees are also, aren't the committees also judged on the resolution saying, were you effective after the resolution? And I feel like, and I hate to use this term, but it's the first one that comes to mind, it's sort of dead on arrival. So we're passing a resolution. I don't know if it would pass, to be honest. We're discussing a resolution that wouldn't be effective. If we're being graded on the success of resolutions, that's it. I think a statement is a statement. Doesn't have to be a resolution. It could also be a letter or a statement, or just what we've already expressed in open meetings. But we can certainly, if you want to,
yeah, I mean, the resolutions are the statement, right? But it's also one of those things, we don't know how effective it's going to be until we push on it. So the slight difference is that we're not advocating for a specific branch to remain open. We're highlighting that there is a need for branches. And I don't think necessarily that everyone is aware of that after Kipsey in the district, that there are no other libraries in our district. 58th is just outside, 53rd is just outside Stavros Narcos, but we can continue offline. We don't need
to. Just the one thing that I'll mention too. Obviously, I mentioned the community center that Jeannie and I, and certainly by extension the full board has taken up. That we are clear. We'd love to see a library as part of that scope, a major part of that scope. So here's the committee talking about expressing the need for a library in a community center versus a full-fledged standing library. That could potentially be our statement to the public that we do want to see a new library, and it's just going to be part of a community center. That's all.
Yeah, and actually that brings me to my next point. So the community center item, I actually think should be on the land use agenda. That's something Sandy and I have already discussed about potential sites. I think once we kind of get to a point where we can discuss what specifically it looks like, that actually would be shared among several different committees, because there's been talk about senior centers, youth centers, as well as part of this. So I would actually like to take that off of environment and parks and put that with land use, since it is currently a land use item. And then we can talk specifically about what can be included in a proposed community center. So I'd like to take that item off. And
Well, regardless of where it sits, if land use and everybody else thinks the library should be part of that, then clearly that's going to be a step forward for the library.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just not a green space issue as of now, so it's a land use item. So let's take that off of environment parks, and we'll figure out with Sandy about when she wants to add that to a potential agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any questions, Jesus, do you have for environment parks? Oh, and then just last item, Kevin, if you could connect with Elvie as well, about the disease person you spoke with at the UN.
I had planned to do that, yes. And this was just a conversation that took place where it's not even on the agenda, but I wanted to make sure that I was transparent from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and appreciate it. And yeah, because I know she's interested in a couple of topics as well. So if this is something that you can
Absolutely.
share with her, that'd be really great. Thank you.
No worries.
So Jesus, are you all good?
Hey, I have a question for Jesus, because I had mentioned a graphic artist. Do you work with somebody regularly? Is that something that's not a heavy lift to try to get someone into to help us, in this case, an illustrative map if we go that direction?
We do have one. Just send an email to the office with me and Alexandra on it, so we get a clear sense of what it is that you're looking to do, and we can connect. We can make that happen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, thank you very much, Kevin. We'll move on to the next committee. Elvie didn't join later, did she?
I just see her.
So we'll skip that. We'll touch base with her offline, and we'll move to budget and governmental affairs. Reshma. I think you're on mute, Reshma.
Okay, for some reason, the unmute button wasn't working. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you to everybody who attended the emergency meeting and had joined on our August budget meeting to discuss the issues with the redistricting in City Council District 5. And I hope people can make it to the hearing on Monday. In addition to what Kyle mentioned, if anyone wants a sample letter, we also have that as a resource if you want something more than just to send an email saying you're in support of our resolution. Our September meeting, we will have a public hearing on the district needs statement and budget request for FY 2024. Thank you to all the committee chairs who have gotten back to me. I will be in touch with those that I haven't heard from yet. And as you all know, that at the end of October, we will need to submit this to OMB. And that's gonna, be the discussion point for both our September and October budget meetings.
All right, thank you very much, Reshma. Are there any questions for Reshma? Jesus, do you have anything?
Nope, not at this time.
All right, thank you very much, Reshma. And we'll move on to Brian in transportation.
Hey guys, so this is actually going to be our first transportation committee meeting in a while. So one thing about this is that despite having a full agenda, the agenda itself is probably going to be processed pretty efficiently. It's a bunch of bus stop applications and 2 street co-namings that we're going to hear out, and hopefully the committee agreed on a process earlier this year. It was advanced to full board. The full board did not ratify that process, but my feeling is that since we don't really have to do anything official in this regard, we can just kind of follow along how we want to do this, but otherwise aim to just hear out the evidence and do a reso vote on anything that we support and advance it to full board if there's a co-naming that we support. The chair's report, DOT will have to give us also a pretty lengthy update, because I've been checking our emails and they've updated a lot of stuff for us over the summer. So I'm sure that they'll give us that and then some during the committee meeting. But the chair's report will be pretty lengthy because we're going to be laying out progress on some agenda items. The committee has not actually even heard at this point anything that we've discussed already about the FDR drive, and I'll be updating them on that. Just for the benefit of everybody who's here, We've been having touch base meetings between myself, Brendan and Jesus and Kyle regarding the sort of way we're fleshing out how we're going to do public interaction with the FDR Drive thing before the committee actually puts a topic on the agenda. We're going to have at least one public information session in which we're going to try to make an effort to lay out information for the public about what the FDR Drive's impacts are and what kind of capacity it has, and what potential there is for the space with reconfiguration or any sort of conversion of anything. And I think it's also really important to kind of have the public hear in some sort of way that it is car infrastructure. The city itself should try to move away from all of these gas-burning combustion vehicles, and it should also try to reform traffic in a way that keeps everybody safer. So these are like a minimum of things to go over, but there is a lot of stuff out there about this in terms of like what urban highways do and what purposes they serve and how the space could be used. It turns out there's actually been a lot of urban highways in New York State, including up in the Bronx, that have been either already decommissioned and converted or in the process of doing so. So that's the kind of stuff we would bring up to spark public curiosity. And then later on, we would actually have hopefully a more productive conversation with the committee and the public about what is possible for that, rather than something just sprung on everybody with only the assumption that we're going to do something about all the traffic. I think with congestion pricing and the improvement of transit in the region, that there is no need actually to have traffic going through our district from places that are not in our district to places that are not in our district. So one thing we'll also do is we'll ask DOT and state DOT for information about traffic volumes along the way. We've talked about traffic studies that DOT has done, for example, around the tunnel around there. So maybe some of that information will be useful. We have a couple of months to go through this. So that's the vision for that at this point. But it's not immediately on our agenda, and we're just currently doing some planning in small bursts for the public information session, which will likely fall on November 15th if you want to pencil that in. Don't have anything public announced yet, but that was the date that we were looking at.
Right.
And again, that will not be an official community board proceeding where we need to have quorum, or that the committee is not being convened for that. That is just going to be sort of like a public session, something less than a panel discussion, and maybe a little bit more like a public hearing without a real, with that being the only thing on the topic list.
All right, thank you, Brian. Sandy actually has a question for you. Go ahead, Sandy.
All right.
Yes, and I was at the night out. Kyle was there as well, the one at Hammarskjöld Plaza, and several people came with concerns about traffic, and their input was the extremely loud vehicles, and the fact that, especially on 2nd Avenue, there seemed to be a lot of kind of I don't know how to describe them, but people get together, they race down the street, it's very loud. And I think anybody who lives close to 2nd probably can elaborate on that.
I think it was they called them caravans and the dirt bikes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was, I guess I think it's a transportation issue. I'm not sure, but if it's, they came specifically to express concern about that and see if there was something that the community board could do. And just, when we're talking about expressways, they actually referred to 2nd Avenue as the expressway. So I'd really like to see some input on how that traffic on that could be reduced. It's fantastic to get rid of the FDR, but 2nd Avenue has a really big impact on our community. So just some things that you may want to take up in the coming months.
Yeah, we're gonna look at that. My hope, and I think our longstanding hope on transportation, has been that congestion pricing will meet hopefully the targets of 10 to 20% traffic reduction in the core, including along the avenues in our part of the district. And if that happens, maybe there's less problems with congestion and less problems with standing noise because everything will be transient. I used to live on Allen Street in the Lower East Side, which is a pretty heavy corridor, bi-directional. And if somebody came through on a motorcycle anytime after 9 o'clock at night, it just like rattled the whole building. And it's state law that you're not supposed to be making these incredible amounts of noise with a vehicle in the middle of a city. You're not supposed to, certainly not supposed to lay on the horn. We can actually take a second look at the legal setup for this kind of thing. But I think that it's very much agreed that in Manhattan, we definitely don't want these loud vehicles. Whether or not the vehicles themselves are registered is something that the police could take a look at, but it's beside the point because even registered vehicles are coming through making a ton of noise. And I think that this is something, there's been studies on this saying that this actually has health effects for residents, all this background noise from automobiles all the time. Maybe in the future we'll see some relief with this with the prevalence of electric vehicles, but I think either way, I'd like to see something proactive from the authorities to say this is an actual harm-causing thing. It's absolutely not necessary for all of us to put up with this given the technology that exists today. We need people to put their foot down on it. I believe there are laws in place already that we wouldn't have to actually have a resolution to pass laws. We don't pass resolutions to tell police to do their job because that's just something that is our default position, that the law should be enforced unless we have some dispute with an existing law. We also don't want to get into a political battle with the police, insinuating that they're not doing something, although clearly in this case, we have experience talking with NYPD.
Brian, I didn't think you needed to come up with a solution. It's just something you may want to address at the committee, but thank you.
I mean, this is why we're not addressing it probably at the committee. It's not productive for us to go through it in all these different ways. I mean, it's essentially already out there. If there's agencies that need to enforce this stuff, then the board processes that they need to enforce it with the laws that are already out there. Unless there's some other kind of legal overhaul that we're suggesting. We are going to have a very full committee schedule for the first half of this year. So I could certainly bring it up in the chair's report or ask to see if a committee member wants to write a resolution to address a gap in this. But yeah, we would have to come up with a solution for us to discuss it at committee.
Yeah, I think also just Sandy and I were talking to the same people, also just thinking maybe, a committee member could maybe do some research on, potential fixes even. It doesn't have to be fixed in the next month or so, but someone, they were bringing up, different locations that had, or models, I guess, throughout the world that had speed bumps or monitoring certain decibels of engines or, things like that, that were brought up. And obviously that's outside of my expertise right now, but could be something of interest to go forward. And of course, on the board office side, we'll treat it as a service request to make sure that people are feeling safe on the street and that the police are aware of it and making sure that they can do everything within their resources. But I want to throw it to because I think she actually has something to add or to ask. Rishma?
No, I was going to add, I do live on 2nd Avenue and I had complained about this, Sandra. And it's been ATVs and dirt bikes that were going down, or motorcycles, or cars that look like sports cars. I mean, I don't know that much about different types of vehicles since I'm a New Yorker and I only take the subway. And the NYPD did crack down on this last year. There is a law against it. The problems were even worse in Washington Heights and in Harlem than they were in Midtown East, where I'm living. But even with the crackdowns, it is still happening. But I personally have noticed a lot less of it.
Thank you, Reshma. All right, I think we can table this for another time, or we can discuss this more in depth offline. But let's, for the sake of the agenda, move on to public safety. So Matt.
Actually, Kyle. Can I, a couple things. Brian, I believe you've asked Larry to write the resolutions for the bus stop items. We'll send him a reminder about that because your committee literally falls the day before full board. So the turnaround time will have to, essentially these resolutions will have to be done for the committee. And the office will ask Larry to, if he can get them to us even the morning of or the day before, or the sooner the better, even better still, because we're going to format them. And as soon as your committee is over and they have passed, we're going to stick them up on the website like we do all other resolutions in advance of full board. Are you all right with that?
Yes, it should be coordinated that you guys at least have a draft of affirmative resolutions prior to our meeting, knowing that we have not passed it, but knowing that you can just fill in the details of the votes right after the meeting so that you have what you need to send out right away. There should be no lag on turnaround on it. Whatever, Larry should not have to come back and write anything after our meeting.
Right. Now, that also leaves the two co-naming resolutions. Now those, I mean, may not be as pressing. I mean, if those have to be written to be presented at, say, October's full board, even though they may be passed at September's transportation committee meeting, is that what you were envisioning? Or are you envisioning someone to turn them around super quick? Or
do we have a time cap on either of those two?
I don't believe so. We can certainly look into that more, but
then they will be written for October's full board.
Okay, good. All right, and then the last thing I guess applies to every committee that goes after September 12th, as Kyle mentioned. We're still up in the air about what rules are going to be in effect after the 12th. We have been basing our ability to meet on Zoom on the governor's executive emergency order. However, the way the law is written and the way CB6's June resolution is written, any COVID executive order, be it from the mayor or from the governor, can count. There is another one from the city that's floating out there. And that one will either be, well, if it's going to be extended, it will be extended later at the end of this month. So we may know by the end of this month whether we can extend the Zoom meeting capabilities beyond the 12th, rather than having to wait until the 12th itself to know about these. So as Kyle said, we'll keep everyone posted.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. So we'll move on to Matt with public safety.
Yeah. Also just want to add that we have also touched on the vehicular noise issues in this committee as well, and discussed possible funding for other enforcement devices, which unfortunately did not pass through the committee. There are too many question marks. In any case, on to the September 15th agenda. It's going to be a relatively quick meeting. We'll try to get caught up on time and other issues that surfaced over the summer. We'll be inviting the precincts. Fill us in. There was a shooting, as many of you know, on 26th Street last month. So we'll try to get some updates on that and see what other trends are transpiring. And we also have the qualified immunity issue. That's a lower priority, but it was held over spring. So that is pretty much all I have. Like I said, I will be very busy that week with the getting ready for the UN General Assembly. The primary impacts, just so everybody knows, are the week of the 18th, which is the start of that Sunday. So work from home if you can. And not to travel along the east side. So that's pretty much it. We have our training that we discussed about for October on bystander training. And hopefully by November, we'll have some new committee members for other committee visits. That's all I have. Questions?
I have a question, Matt. So there was some, when we got the agenda, there was some question whether you were going to have the precincts on the agenda. So they are on, it's not tentative.
I mean, anytime you invite police, it's always tentative until about 24 hours out. But the hope is that someone will be able to present. Brendan had flagged that because he was aware of the timing of the UN General Assembly, which I point that out only because there will be a lot of documents that say it starts on the 13th, but the real impacts don't start until the 18th for us. So that should happen. If anything changes, I'll certainly let you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to housing and homelessness. Rich?
Thank you. I'm sorry about the background noise. Can you hear me okay?
You're good.
Yep. Okay. So since street noise is the topic of the day, I will open by saying something about that, which is that I know for a fact that the city is issuing automated noise summonses to motorcycles on 2nd Avenue between 59th and 40th. I don't know where the listing point is, but I know people who have gotten them. So at least something is happening. I won't go any more into the topic, but that was worth saying. Our meeting is, unlike public safety, our meeting is going to be a long one. We will end up having a long discussion about the budget request to get everything resolved. I have a schedule written out over the next 4 weeks to make sure that my committee members and I do the prep, and that we come to that meeting with a proposal that we can run through to rank budget requests and come up with a resolution in that meeting. The other current topic is the increase in families entering the shelter system. This is related to the Texas buses that the mayor has been talking about, but it's not only tied to that. DHS has been reporting an increase in families, many of them asylum applicants, dating back to May. So, the immediate local trigger for the conversation is the reopening of the Hotel Marcel across from my apartment as a shelter, this time for families. And I want to make sure that the committee knows that we talk about the implications of this. And if there's anything that we want to turn into resolution, I want to give the committee members an opportunity to do that. It's a developing situation, so we may know more before September 19th, for example, about DHS's plans to open a large intake center, which is likely to be in Community District 5. Separate from that, just to talk for a minute about medium-term plans, we have a bunch of legislation left over from last year that's still sort of open topics, like the eviction moratorium and good cause, but also 421A, NYCHA transparency. There was legislation signed that we haven't discussed. And the board, some members of the committee have asked that we put some energy in the fall into homeowner issues, in addition to tenant issues and homeless issues. And we do plan to do that. One side of that is property tax reform, which is a state issue, but the city controller is pushing it. And the other is we are still looking at doing some sort of public event, a homeowner summit, which will probably happen in November when you think about the lead time. But I want to talk about it with the committee in September and make some concrete plans. The only other thing that I will add is that I will do the review of the past agenda for Kyle this week, and we can talk about that next week. And I can do some more long-term planning. That's all.
Thank you, Rich. Jesus, do you have any questions?
No
Hold on.
more a
I got to
comment.
mute myself.
No questions, but more a comment, especially since Rich mentioned the prospect potentially an event or something in November. Keep in mind that we do have the Transportation Committee's FDR event.
Yeah.
Very likely going to be in mid-November. And we're in the process right now of starting to shift around September, October, November meetings that conflict with holidays, because in the second half of the year there are a lot of them. Before
All right.
before you get fixated on a date, maybe run that by the office first, because we are going to make we have made a list just today actually of like November, December dates, October, September dates that are actually free, that don't have, say, a committee already claiming them and things like that. So that'll be, or that don't conflict with a holiday or something like that. So keep the office in the loop when selecting dates.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to drop off for a second to mute myself, and then I'll be right back.
Perfect. Thank you, Rich. We'll move on to land use and waterfront. Sandy, go ahead.
Yes, and we're going to have an update from the ESCR. Stuyvesant Cove Park is scheduled to open in September, a portion of it. Solar One has asked them to push it off a little bit because they're not quite ready for it. But so there will be some reworking of the detour and the areas around that. So they're going to come and present that. And then the recommendations in the report, a look back at Manhattan CB6's 197A plan of 2008. That's the our planner's report from Kieran, and it has some items that we talked about adding to the district needs. So we will discuss that. We also are talking about trying to engage another planner. The deadline is end of this month, but we thought we might be able to expand on what Kieran did. And one of the things was sustainable planning. And I've been able to locate one of his colleagues' proposal that was done for CB3. So we'd like to take a look at that. Continuing discussion of converting the parking onto the FDR drive. I think we need to put together a very complete list of questions and issues for the EDC so we can get some specific answers. And then the recharging stations. This actually brings us into a new item that came up where there are going to be 3 citywide text amendments that the mayor has come up with, and it's called, I think it's the City of Yes. So it's trying to support some 3 different initiatives. One is to support businesses, one is to support energy, any reduced energy, and the third is to expand housing. So Dan Gorodnik sent us a list of them. It does require a sort of extensive knowledge of the existing zoning to understand how it's going to impact us. There are citywide amendments, so they don't all have the same impact on our district, but it is something that we can start to take a look at the meeting. And of course, I'm not sure if it's time sensitive, but we can add the issue of the community center in St. Martin's. If that's something, we could add that to September, or it could be October.
Yeah, I was thinking that could be an interesting topic for the fellow to be pulled into. Because I know we were talking about like the Brookdale site, which has been talked about for a very long time, and where, you know, we've discussed having a community center before. So, I mean, we can touch base offline or during our committee check-in in the next couple of weeks to see how we best want to proceed with that. But that could be something that the fellow specifically focuses on.
Yes, absolutely, because that's certainly part of one of the things in the 197A that we could expand on.
Absolutely.
And actually, we only had 2 agendas, Kavitha and I, so it's going to be a short discussion, hopefully.
Well, we'll focus it more on the future then.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds okay. Okay.
Fantastic. All right, do you have any questions?
So just to be clear, the community center item is going to be on the agenda for September. Yes.
Yes, because we will have had to submit our planning proposal by then, so we can kind of elaborate on what we've submitted.
All right. This one sort of been languishing on the agenda and getting sort of kicked down the road month after month after month after month. We typically, since it's still listed as tentative, that's what red means. We typically don't put the agenda up until this is confirmed. Has this been confirmed?
Well, Lou was working on a resolution, but it may be a moot point now with this new citywide zoning text amendment. So I think it's certainly worth a discussion, but it's probably not a resolution.
All right, so will this be then a discussion on this, or will this just be folded into a discussion on the larger text amendments? Should we cut this entirely and only add it if it actually does materialize?
I think we keep it as just a one-line item, and we can see how we go about addressing it more. The text amendments haven't come out, and it is fairly broad, the description of them at this point. So apparently we have the opportunity to have input. So maybe we can just say what our ideas are for how to implement automobile recharging citywide.
All right, I have sent the information that we do have to George, and asked him if he could perhaps shed any light on any of it. So let's see what he says about that. So then as far as the language for this is continued discussion on
automobile recharging stations.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll reach out to George as well, because I think the text amendments could be, a one-year project, or it could be, we need to probably help narrow down the scope.
Right, but yeah, the text amendments, my understanding is that the planning and drafting will all be done in the coming months, and the city will be looking to start rolling them out properly early in 2023.
But they did specifically say they wanted input from the community, that was
a month ago, maybe. And they said they did say when they would call us, but yeah, so I guess at some point they're going to call us, and they're going to be expecting the community board to have something to say.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and when you reach out to George, please CC me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to youth and education. John? You're on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I had to unmute. September is a difficult month in schools, and it's compounded by the timing of the meeting being scheduled for Rosh Hashanah. And then the board office was very flexible in helping us pick dates, but earlier dates, given the beginning of school, are not very productive. So we ended up on picking September 28th for our meeting. That falls right after Rosh Hashanah, and it's right before parent-teacher conferences. So it's there are still some moving parts here. I have an agenda that I can read, and Jesus, if it's easier for me to send it to you by email or something afterwards. But my plan right now is to have a forum on family and student experience of the 2022-23 DOE high school admissions process, an opportunity for CB6 families to describe their experience to elected officials, period. Now,
let's get that email to John.
Yeah, I think it's probably better if I email that to you. I'd be happy to put it in the chat if you want, but but I did write it out. Now, there are a couple of issues around this. I want to do two things here. I've been attending the Community Education Council meetings all summer, and I'm in regular contact with a lot of parents. This issue has energized parents and guardians and families more than any issue since specialized high school admissions back in 2018. So I want to do something about it. So there's an issue here. So I've already reached out to the District 2 Superintendent, Kevin McGuire, who's agreed in principle to it, and also reached out to Ben Morden, President of CEC D2. He's agreed. But he's taken his kids to college this week. So we need to get a vote from the CEC2 to co-sponsor this, because I very much would like them to co-sponsor this thing. So what I would really like to ask here is, since we're talking about a September 28th date, if you could give me just a little more time to, before we put this up as anything but TBD, because once we put this on the agenda, there will be a lot of interest in it. And I want to be sure that we have all of our ducks in order for this. So, Jesus, is there any way that I can buy, until the 28th of August, just to be sure that I have all the moving pieces? Plus, we need to have a sense of whether this will be in Zoom. I'm assuming we're going to be able to do this on Zoom because it's going to be a forum, and I can't predict how many families and parents would be interested in attending to address this issue. So it's just very tough timing at the end of September, with parent-teacher conferences coming in at the end of the week, Rosh Hashanah coming in at the beginning of the week. So I just need a little more time to get all these pieces in order. Can we live with that, Kyle and Jesus? Is that something we can live with?
That's fine. I mean, there's no law that says the committee has to meet in September. I mean, for example,
that's what I was thinking. But
if October is a better month, I mean, assuming no one else on the executive committee has a complaint about that.
Yeah, that might actually work better for everyone, because this issue will still be alive. If you could I get the forbearance of the executive committee for just, for until, let's say, the 28th of August, which is 28 days before the 28th of September, before we make this public.
Well, John, you can, you don't need to put this up for a vote. So if you want to,
no, I'm just,
if you want to,
work as a team.
What I'll say is, like, if you need to cancel the meeting for September, that's totally fine, and we strategize for October instead.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I'll mention is just keep myself as well as the board office in the loop on all of these conversations as well, because obviously there are a lot of resources available here, and also just to make sure that they are aware of what's going on in terms of the creation of the agenda and forum, because there might be other committees that are doing forums and different.
And I've just been addressing this week, and I got speedy responses from the superintendent and the president. They're eager to do it. It's just that there are logistical issues involved. Okay.
So we'll work on that. So no worries about the push. If you need to cancel September, let's just cancel September so that we have a proper meeting. There's no requirement to meet every single month.
Okay, so if we just leave it TBD for 10 more days, that would be helpful to me.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're going to tell me by the end of the month, of this month, whether September meeting will even happen at all, and if it will, or if it's going to be October, you will tell me what the topic is, and so that we can formulate a public-facing.
Yeah, this will be very public-facing, and we're going to want to have our electeds there. But this is one of those things, if we build it, they will come, because it's such a hot issue in the minds of their constituents.
Okay.
Thank you all. I will be quiet and let you move ahead.
Thank you, John. So move on to business affairs and licensing. Claire?
Hello, everyone. For September, we are definitely going to have our meeting, but I'm not really sure what to put on the agenda. One thing I think I mentioned our last exec committee was the form that the state did on cannabis, and I never really followed up on that, but I think it would be good to collaborate with a few other committees and just like discuss what was presented and kind of think ahead to when these like shops open at. In terms of August, we did have a few more applications than I was hoping, so I'm still finishing going through them. I think we'll still cancel, but it's next week. Jesus, I'm gonna email Alex first thing tomorrow after I go over those. And yes, I got the email with the agendas, so I'll review that and coordinate with you both as well. But other than that, I think I'll waive the rest of my report. Sandy. Unless
Just to let you know, one of the text amendments that the mayor has come up with is to allow dancing in all bars. Because he
Good to
feels
know.
that's important for, that's one of the things that's come across. So when it does come out, we'll discuss it with your committee.
Yes. Yes, sounds good. I mean, who doesn't love dancing, but
When I first moved to New York City from Texas, well, from DC, but Texas, I was shocked that dancing isn't allowed just anywhere. It was quite a culture shock.
That's
Well, I
funny you
always,
said.
when I was chairing the committee, I would always call it the flash dance rule, or sorry, the footloose rule, and
Right.
because there were some places where bars used to have. I mean, it depends, right? Like the definition of dancing, because there's certain licenses or cabaret licensing. What do they mean by dancing? Is it just regular, people having fun? And there would be people who would come in and be like, they were monitoring bars and said, oh, there was this type of dancing going on at this dive bar. There was that type of dancing. And it was kind of like, oh my God, only until you join community board, like, do you realize the different types of dancing? So,
Totally.
yeah.
I will second what Jesus just said. A lot of my friends live in other cities, and I gotta say, I feel like the bar experience is just a lot more fun and energetic there at the places that, like everywhere, allows dancing. And I love it, but would love to hear more about that. Sandy, thank you.
So just to be clear, you're going to get back to Alexandra on her email regarding waiver requests, plus whether there will be an August meeting. Yes, because as of tomorrow, it'll be a week away.
Right. I'll email her tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're now at old or new business. So if any committee member has any old or new business, please raise your hand. Yep, John.
Yeah, very quickly, I just see that if we do go ahead with not having a education committee meeting on the 28th, and Claire, you just mentioned the cannabis issue. Do you think it would be feasible for us to have a discussion of, cannabis and in relation to schools at a meeting then, or was that something we should talk about offline?
I think I'll probably bring it up in our committee, but I think it'll be an ongoing conversation,
Okay, that makes sense.
between a few of us.
Right, got it.
And then just before we wrap up, just a reminder, again, the public hearing on redistricting the city council is on the 22nd. So if you joined late, it's at 5:30 p.m. There's some links in the chat. It was also included in the email I sent out to everybody earlier this week. So if you can attend virtually, if you can attend in person, if you can do both, if you can also send in some public testimony, as Reshma said, we also have a template for letter writing that we can share with you as well. Again, there is power in numbers for this particular issue. So the more people we can have to show up, the better. And we already have a lot of grassroots leadership in that many people from the local community will be showing up. So would love to see it at the community board level as well. And as I mentioned, I will be providing testimony. The chair of CB8 will be providing testimony. So we will really be in solidarity in that way. So if there's anything else, I don't see it. So seeing no further business, I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:43 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And happy anniversary again, Kevin.